that aesthetic, I think, is born out of documentary. I know that Roger Deakins also has shot a lot of documentary, and I think that, not to compare myself to Roger Deakins.
No, but in many ways, one might say you are the Canadian Roger Deakins.
That aesthetic, careful.
Careful, that? What? Would it be so wrong?
No, I can't say that.
Okay,
no.
but I did.
No.
It's easy for me.
Sure, easy for you.
Welcome back to crafttruck.com and our series Through the Lens, and we are extraordinarily pleased today to have with us one of Canada's gems, one of Canada's cinematic gems, somebody who I fear is gonna at some point be, the rest of the world's gonna figure it out, and you're gonna be swept down shooting movies in LA, New York, and London, and everywhere else, and we'll never hear from you again. But Steve Cosens, director of photography. Right before we started this, you were talking about what your favorite film is, which happens to be my favorite film of yours. So much so that I think I got into a debate with your agent about it.
About Flower and Garnet.
About Flower and Garnet.
Yeah.
It was at the Vancouver Film Festival in 2002.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this circular brush, if I'm not mistaken, opens the movie with
maybe, yeah, I think so, yeah.
Callum Keith Rennie staring through a window at a... And it's all told pretty much silently that his wife has died. Yeah. There's so many shots and scenes I want to ask you about, but they all looked completely natural and at the same time beautiful. Beautiful and cinematic, like you hadn't betrayed anything of the material about this small story that takes place in a small suburban area.
I know it's hard, but you can't just leave him in the hospital. Why don't Fred and I keep him? Just until you get back on your feet.
Yeah. Well, that was my first film. And I think, you know, I've always been, I think I was sort of weaned on Tarkovsky films, Sven Nykvist, so a lot of natural light coming through windows. I think when I started to shoot, that was something that I tried to emulate because I really loved those films. And I think when I got to Flower and Garnet for my first film, I wanted to keep it natural and whatever I could do to do that. I was still learning how to light, but trying to keep it natural by lighting. So there's quite a few things there that were lit, but lit naturally.
In the scene where Callum Keith Rennie finally goes and gets Garnet out of the crib. The movie opens on him staring at the boy in the crib. Evidently, you know, subtextually not able to forgive. And it ends on basically him sort of pulling him up, this now 6-7-year-old boy, out of the crib and holding him, you know. Was it clear that that was the arc of the movie?
Yeah,
and what did you do photographically about because I remember it was so dark and I felt like I was just a fly on the wall watching this. And it was moving, you know, it was extremely moving.
You didn't want me.
I wanted my wife back. It wasn't your fault.
I think we were pretty rushed in the lighting. You know, I look at that and I think I would have done the lighting differently, but you know, I just wanted that kind of one light source. I think this shot where they come together and hug, I always thought that, again, because I think it was rushed, and to me it always felt too dark. But then when I see it today, I saw it not long ago. I don't mind how dark it is. I think it's okay. You see that they're hugging, you see the boy, you know, wrap his arms around him. The interesting thing about that scene is that Keith, nobody knows this, but Keith was actually, we had to lose the boy because of course we had worked him too many hours that day, or like his time was up. So Keith was the one off camera, like who Callum was crying in relation to was Keith, who was, I think Keith sat in the crib, if I recall, and basically just talked to Callum, and that's what brought out that scene.
In a film that is so much about like this kind of desolate world and these lonely characters, and there's so much bleakness to it. Is there a palette choice? Is there like, you know, are you conscious about it, or do you just kind of like go with the scene?
Yeah, I think for sure Keith's also very particular about colors and isolating colors and wardrobe, and we wanted things a little bit more muted, and there were conscious choices all along about what was in the room, and the color of the curtains, and to make the light a little bit more goldeny. And sometimes, often a low budget, you get into a place, it's the only place you have access to, and you have to use what's there. The house that we actually shot in, a lot of the set design, the decor was actually there. It was the house that we wanted.
It was just there.
So we used it. For sure, Keith and I talked about a palette of more browns. We wanted more earthy tones, and bringing out colors in certain scenes and letting other colors kind of disappear. And we all, we kind of mapped that out throughout.
Can you tell me a bit about the shot when he confronts the dog with the gun, and there's this tunnel?
Keith and I, we really like this area up in northern BC, but we drove around a lot trying to find the right culvert, and we found this one that was amazing and abandoned, and it was safe. And I remember it was a challenge to make it feel like he was in the dark in the tunnel, which is one of the toughest things as a DP, is how to light darkness,
Speaking of lighting darkness, the scenes that are when they're all sitting around watching TV,
yeah.
And it just feels like it has this perfect sort of blue from the TV. I mean, did this take a long time to set up, or was it?
That I think was one image 80 on the ground, and I think I had, maybe the gaffer had a couple of flags manipulating it a little to make it feel like TV, but with some diffusion and some blue gel on it too. What I find too often that with TV gags that they're too flickery, but if you watch TV often you could watch something for a minute and it doesn't actually flicker,
Well, it was a beautiful picture. It was certainly one of Canada's best over the past, one humble opinion, one of Canada's best for the past decade.
Yeah, thanks.
It's a beautiful picture. Let's talk about your beginnings, because you said Flower and Garnet's your first picture. So how did you start off? How did you get going? I mean, because you look at your career, and you're basically, it looks like you just started shooting.
Well, I went to Emily Carr in Vancouver,
yeah,
and I made an experimental black and white film that I didn't intend on sending it out to festivals or anything, but when people started to see it, they said, "Oh, you should send this out to this festival and that festival." It humbly, I say, it won every festival that I put it into for the either experimental or documentary, and it was after that people started asking me to shoot their films, and before I knew it, I was a DP, and I hadn't really intended on being a DP. It just started happening. So yeah, when I got out of school, I just started shooting, and I shot karaoke video for a while. I always say that it's actually where I learned to light, is in shooting karaoke, because which I know it sounds funny,
fabulous.
But we we had to shoot 2 videos a day, and we would have to go into some place that we hadn't seen, and I used to have to light a room and try to make it look good, and I always compared it to a Rubik's Cube, just having like 20 minutes to light a place and make it look good.
Going back to your influences, so you mentioned Tarkovsky.
Well, for sure, Roger Deakins, like every DP.
Right.
And Harris Savides. The woman that shot Sweetie, an Australian film. Jane Campion.
Jane Campion.
Yeah,
genius.
so it was her first film. And I remember it was shot in a way, it had nice angles, and it had style that really inspired me at the time. This was in art school. And I watched it again and again. There was something going on there that inspired me. The overall, aesthetic of the film, I appreciate, just photography-wise.
Right. Your cinematography, if I may say so, is the stuff that feels natural, motivated, naturally, that you don't go, but yet at the same time is always a compelling composition, a type of photograph, a motion picture that just makes you relax into it, and it can feel very dynamic at times, even when it's natural.
I would say that I'm most interested in a stylized naturalism. That's how I normally, because I like to push things a little bit into like slightly magical or slightly unreal, but still keep it natural. I'm usually not interested in pure naturalism. It depends on the project. Sometimes, you know, I've shot things where, you know, it suits the story to be purely naturalistic. But generally, I like to just angle it just a little bit towards being stylized. A little, very, very, very subtly.
And what just to dig into that?
Yeah.
That little bit of style. What is what is that?
I think often it's in the framing too. Like, I am very meticulous about my framing. I'm very conscious of every element that I include in the frame. And I think sometimes in my drama, I think the look of it comes from how meticulous I am about framing.
Will you get right in there and cheat furniture a lot just to make sure
definitely.
that? Okay, so let's take some examples. Let's go like Citizen Gangster. Just saw the picture. Originally called Edwin Boyd. Can you think of any scenes in there where you really manipulated and because you don't notice it. The thing about your films, you don't notice the manipulation.
Yeah, I mean, the film is all about the art of the cheat, right?
Right.
And a lot of people get I think the less experience you have, the less you get hung up on the cheat, right? And I know, I'm talking with the director. I know what the edit is going to be. I know what our shots are. I know that I can move that vase like 5 feet to the right.
Right.
I know that it's not going to matter.
Right.
And that comes with experience too. I think when you start off, you're like, oh God, you feel bad that you can move that table 2 feet, but then after a while you realize, God, I can move that table 10 feet.
You just over the years have developed an automatic trigger that you know what.
I think I'm very particular about composition, and so I'll move objects around, but within the realm of keeping it real and not ruining continuity.
What makes a good composition? Steve Cosens.
Balance. And I think a good frame can have a head down a lower right and have nothing except for a piece of light in the very top left. Before I got into film, I actually studied graphic design. That was what I first went into when I got out of high school. I studied graphic design, which I enjoyed, but I realized I just didn't want to do that. But the way that I see things is very graphic. It always has been. It was my draw in graphic design and in photography. When I go into a room or if I'm looking for locations with the director, I look for graphic qualities in the location. It doesn't matter what it is. So because I know how I'm going to frame it, and if I know the scene is by the window, it's like, what's the shape of that window? We'll choose not to use a house because of the shape of the windows. We'll use another house because of the shape of the window, because I know I'm going to probably put that person against the window.
I did notice that every window was just super exposed. And this comes around to one brilliant moment where we're staring through the bars that have been cut open in the second breakout attempt. Was it a budget thing? Was it all things working together, or was it you said, like, I want those windows to be several stops over, and then you work the characters from there?
I don't mind that in that film. I don't always do that. It allowed us to shoot quite quickly and to shoot in multiple directions. If I went by a window that was actually the source, I didn't mind that the window was the source and we could see it and I could turn around. And so it was a time saver. It was a budget. Really, it was a budget thing too. But also, I didn't mind it. I liked it.
And was there a conscious decision to make it sort of a little bit less colorful, like?
Yeah. The palette and the wardrobe, for sure. We kept all the colors very monochromatic. But then in post, we also desaturated it and played with
even further
contrast. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Right in the beginning, the opening on Scott Speedman in the booth singing, and there's this silent, brilliantly sound mixed silent shot of him singing. In the visual and the sound, you can tell he's not making this as a performer. There's a single on a wide on Speedman sitting on the bed with a big window above him, considering whether or not he's gonna go out and do this again. In the middle of his and it just looks stunning. There's also, by the way, 2 wide shots of jails with snow. He's like, God, I just want to walk through the snow to the building and touch it. You know what I mean?
That we shot we shot in Sault Ste. Marie. And that building is across the river in the U.S. It's actually it's a factory or something. But every morning I would wake up in my hotel room and I was looking at this building. And one day I said to Nathan, Nathan, this is the exterior, because we didn't have an exterior. There's
Right.
So I said, we'll just one morning we'll go down and we'll get a nice shot. And
that's what you did.
Yeah. So we just used that.
There is one sequence in Citizen Gangster I also wanted to ask you about. Although the windows were hard sources, they were always, to me, kind of like evenly, softly lit, you know, from one direction. And then all of a sudden we're in this room with this really hard, you know, clear source. When they formed this new gang, the Boyd Gang, and broken out of jail the first time.
I distinctly wanted just something different. I wanted the light to not, I wanted it to be a little garish, a little harder, and just a different feel in that space, but also to feel fairly naturalistic. There was a bit of a dive, and that it's believable that it didn't have a shade on it. It was just a, you know, bare bulb, and I needed a lighting setup that was, I could move and, you know, go 360 and you know, do a lot. So the single light bulb just worked for me, and I love bare light bulbs, and we were shooting on film too, so I wasn't too worried about the latitude of it. Yeah, so it was really an aesthetic choice, but helped with speed too.
I don't give a shit. We're split up right now. Say, hey. I lost a lot of money doing those banks by myself. I lost a lot of money. I'm damn sure your take wasn't any different. Come here. Look at me. Now's your chance to say something.
The Tracy Fragments.
Well, for me, the Tracy Fragments, it was the first time that I worked with Bruce McDonald, and it was the first time that I shot on kind of a prosumer video camera, the HVX, the DVX 100. And it, to me, was a revelation that you can kind of move so quickly and get a decent latitude with video. Again, also because it was low budget, we were moving quickly, and I wanted to use all natural light. I didn't want to use any light. I kind of just said to myself, okay, you know, we don't have the time, and I didn't want to. I wanted to use natural light, but again, I wanted to kind of just stylize it a little bit. So, you know, Bruce was on board with that, so we really went into that just shooting it almost like a documentary.
Right.
But then just kind of stylizing it a little bit, you know, just stylizing in terms of, you know, where you put that practical light in relation to your actor.
My name is Tracy Berkowitz, 15. Just a normal girl who hates herself.
I love the tone of that film and the feel of it, and I think the editing.
Well, I was going to say, it is an editor's movie. That movie,
yeah.
I think it was Gareth Scales and Jeremy Muntz and
Matt Hannum
as well, who all dove in and cut that picture. And what was it? So, as a photographer, having shot, what was it, 20 or 25 days that you shot the movie for? Yeah,
something like that.
And then you turn around and you see this thing with upwards of 99, you know, 99 tiles on the screen. What was it like to watch it cut together?
Well, I always knew it was going to be that way. It wasn't a surprise that it was cut like that. And so we, you know, while we were shooting it, I collected as many different angles of, you know, if Ellen was sitting there, I would, you know, shoot her feet and, you know, just get all these frames, knowing that there were going to be these multiple boxes used.
Yeah.
And also I asked another DP to come along, Michael LeBlanc, to shoot, you know, some of the toys and, you know, some stuff like just against black too, because I knew those were going to be used in the boxes too. So for me, it was interesting because I knew that those were all going to be amalgamated into this kind of block aesthetic. So it was exciting in a way because I didn't know exactly what it would be, but I knew it was going to happen. Each time I see it, I'm watching a different story. My eye is moving in a different direction each time, and for me, I like that about that film.
Talk a little bit about shooting formats.
Well, if I could shoot on film, I would shoot on film. Those days are gone.
Right.
For the kind of level of productions that I do, for the budgets that I tend to work on, people want to shoot on HD. I do like the Alexa, and I just shot a film. I've shot quite a bit with the Alexa now, but the film I just shot, I feel like I have it kind of dialed in to look as much like film as I can, and with filters and stuff. I think a lot of people, you know, when they make the transition from film to video, I think people think that you can just shoot video without taking care so much of the highlights and controlling windows and that kind of stuff. And I really just take as much care as I always have with film. With video too, you know.
Where do you want to go from here? I mean, you know, you just want to continue to just tighten that.
Yeah, I kind of just, you know, I synthesize, like, you know, I'm so inspired by photography and music and painting, and I think as a you know, as a cinematographer, my work will always be kind of evolving because I'm always influenced by the other arts, and you know, I'm always synthesizing these different aspects from different arts, and so I don't really, you know, I myself don't know where my work is going to go. You know, I will only continue to just, you know, bring those other influences into my work, and who knows where it will go. I think I'm still evolving, and my craft will evolve. I don't know where it's going.
That's a fabulous answer. Well, sincerely, from us here at Craft Truck, from me personally, I want to say, thank you for what you've contributed to this country's culture, to our film.
Thank you.
And we look forward to many, many more years of Steve Cosens.
Thanks, man.
For joining us.
Thank you.
That's about it.
Okay.
Do you want a beer?